Hi guys, so this is going to be our first ELA support for our 8th grade packet. You are going to need a copy of your packet either digitally or printed out. You're also going to need a piece of paper, a highlighter or a marker, and then some paper to write on, and then we'll get started.
All right, so when we look at our English Language Arts grade 8 packet that we are getting from the district, there's a few things you're going to see. First, up at the top, they put some pre-reading questions for you. These are optional, but they get you to start thinking about the topic. So our article we're going to read today is called Activate This Bracelet of Silence and Alexa Can't Eavesdrop. So for those of you who have an Echo Dot at home or a Google Home, those sorts of things, you know that when you say, okay, Google or Alexa, they start to listen. And so some of the questions that you have up at the top is, would you ever consider wearing privacy armor to prevent small devices from eavesdropping on you? How worried are you about technology listening to your conversations? Have you ever had an experience that made you think your phone, computer, or smart home device was eavesdropping on you? So for me, sometimes when I'm like online shopping on Amazon, I will notice that once I look at something, when I go back to Instagram or Facebook, I will start to see ads for those same things I was looking at on Amazon. And it always kind of freaks me out because I'm like, what else are you paying attention to that I haven't noticed? So the next section talks about close reading. So the first one talks about underlining supporting details that support the central idea. At the end of the article, I know it looks really long, but it's okay, I promise. You'll see that one of the questions of the follow-up is clearly identify the central idea and give an objective summary of the text. So the point of giving you this close reading things to do up here supports you when you get to the end. The other one is circle unfamiliar terms or phrases and look them up. This is so important because if you don't know what the article is saying or you don't know what a word means, it can completely change the meaning of the text. So you have to make sure that you know what these words mean, and we don't just skip them over because we're like, that word's too hard. I do this all the time. You can just type the word into Google and it'll pop right up from either dictionary.com or right at the beginning. And then the last thing is you're going to put a question mark next to confusing information. Wherever you see these question marks, these might be a good thing to ask your parents about, ask an older brother or sister about. I mean, you could ask a younger brother or sister, but I don't know that they're going to know the information for you. So these are just different ways that you can mark up your text so that you remember as you go along. Another suggestion would to be after every paragraph or two, write a sentence that summarizes what you just read. That way, when you get to the end of the article, you're not like, I have no idea what happened at the beginning. I'm notorious for doing that, and then I have to read the whole thing over again, and it just gets super frustrating. So this article comes to us from the New York Times. So activate this bracelet of silence and Alexa can't eavesdrop. Microphones and cameras lurk everywhere. You may want to slip on some privacy armor. So I'm going to highlight the words that I'm not totally positive about. That way they're easier to stand out than just me circling them. Also, I'm notorious for circling larger than the word, and I didn't want to cross out any other words. So, last year, Ben Zhao decided to buy an Alexa-enabled Echo speaker for his Chicago home. Mr. Zhao just wanted a digital assistant to play music, but his wife, Heather Zhang, was not enthused. She freaked out, he said. Miss Zhang characterized her reaction differently. First, she objected to having the device in their house. She said then, when Mr. Zhao put the Echo in a workspace they shared, she made her position perfectly clear. I said, I don't want that in the office. Please unplug it. I know the microphone is constantly on. Mr. Zhao and Miss Zhang are computer science professors at the University of Chicago, and they decided to channel their disagreement into something productive. With the help of an assistant professor, Pedro Lopez, they designed a piece of digital armor, a bracelet of silence, that will jam the Echo or any other microphones in the vicinity from listening in on the wearer's conversations. So when I used Google to look up the word vicinity, it told me it was the area surrounding a particular place. So the Echo, the bracelet they created, will jam the Echo or any other microphones around wherever they are from listening to the wearer's conversation. The bracelet is like an anti-smartwatch, both in its cyberpunk aesthetic and in its purpose of defeating technology. So we hear aesthetic a lot, especially when we talk about clothes, or if you're older, we talk about like home design, and we want like a bohemian aesthetic or a farmhouse aesthetic, which is really popular right now. So aesthetic is when you're concerned with beauty or appreciation of beauty. So basically they want it to be pretty and attractive, but they also want it to be working and do the job it's supposed to do. So, a large, somewhat ungainly white cuff with spiky transducers, the bracelet has 24 speakers that emit ultrasonic signals when the wearer turns it on. The sound is imperceptible to most ears, with the possible exception of young people and dogs, but nearby microphones will detect the high-frequency sound instead of other noises. So context clues kind of explain to me that it has to do with ears. It also has to do with high-frequency sound. So imperceptible means that you can't see it, hear it, smell it, any type of perceiving you can do. It means you're not able to. It's so easy to record these days, Mr. Lopez said. This is a useful defense. When you have something private to say, you can activate it in real time. And when they play back the recording, the sound is going to be gone. During a phone interview, Mr. Lopez turned on the bracelet, resulting in static like white noise for the listener on the other end. So whenever you see these little heads with like gears inside them, that means there are some thinking questions and comprehension questions for you to look at. So I took a piece of paper and I set it up like this, and I just wrote the question out for you and then left some space. I did that for all of them. When you do this, you may just want to write your answer versus writing out the whole question. So the question, because it's in gray, I wrote it darker just so it was a little bit easier to see. It says, why is Miss Zhang nervous about the device her husband has purchased? And is her fear justified? So does her fear make sense? Does it have facts backing it up? Or is it more just of a emotional response, that sort of thing? So they want to know if her fear makes sense or not. And then they also want to know why. So if you were going to answer this question, you may want to start with Miss Zhang. No S. Happy accidents. Is nervous about the device because. Now, you can either answer this in two separate questions, two separate sentences, so one sentence for each question, or you can say because A, B, and C, this makes her fear justified. So however you choose to answer is up to you. It'll be 1 to 2 sentences, so take a little time, answer these, and then pause the video if you need, and jump back in when you're ready. Now that you've taken time to answer that question, our next section is called Polite Surveillance Society. As American homes are steadily outfitted with recording equipment, the surveillance state has taken on an air of domesticity. So when we talk about being domestic or domesticity, we're referencing the things at home. So they're saying the surveillance state of watching and keeping track of things has started to focus more so on home security. Google and Amazon have sold millions of Nest and Ring security cameras, while an estimated 1 in 5 American adults now owns a smart speaker. If you don't know if 1 in 5 does, I will be your 1 in 5. I have an Amazon Echo Dot upstairs. I use it all the time for timers when I'm cooking, for playing music or podcasts. I use it to check the weather because I don't want to get out my phone because I'm lazy. Any sort of thing, it's actually really convenient. Knocking on someone's door or chatting in someone's kitchen now involves the distinct possibility of being recorded. It all presents new questions of etiquette about whether and how to warn guests that their faces and words could end up on a tech company's servers, or even in the hands of strangers. By design, smart speakers have microphones that are always on, listening for so-called wake words like Alexa, Hey Siri, or OK Google. Only after hearing that cue are they supposed to start recording. But contractors hired by device makers to review recordings for quality reasons report hearing clips that were most likely captured unintentionally, including drug deals. 2 Northeastern University researchers, David Schaffness and Daniel Du Bois, recently played 120 hours of television for an audience of smart speakers to see what activates the devices. They found that the machines woke up dozens of times and started recording after hearing phrases similar to their wake words. People fear that these devices are constantly listening and recording you. They're not, Mr. Schaffness said. But they do wake up and record you at times when they shouldn't. Rick Osterloh, Google's head of hardware, recently said homeowners should disclose the presence of smart speakers to their guests. I would and do when someone enters my home, and it's probably something that the products themselves should try to indicate, he told the BBC last year. BBC stands for British Broadcasting Company. It's a news and television station out of Great Britain. Welcome mats might one day be swapped out for warning mats. Or perhaps the tech companies will engineer their products to introduce themselves when they hear a new voice or see a new face. Of course, that could lead to uncomfortable situations like having the Alexa in your bedside Echo Dot suddenly introduce herself to your one-night stand. So here we're going to stop and answer some more questions. This one's a little bit different because the first question or sentence says, underline the evidence that the author presents in this section that supports Mrs. Zhang's position. So if you remember from the first one, the first section, Ms. Zhang is against having these in her home. So you're going to go through and you're going to underline or highlight, depending on what you have at home, any information that supports her position. So if I'm looking through this, I would say having, no. So this one right here says, by design, smart speakers have microphones that are always on, listening for so-called wake words. So that supports her position and that she thinks they're always listening. So that would be one example. There are more throughout, and you can take this time now to look at those. The next question, after you're done highlighting, says, is it valid evidence that supports her argument? Now, valid means sound, base in logic or fact. So, does this evidence have a basis in fact, or is it based in opinions? And remember, facts are something you can prove or not prove. Opinion is more something you believe. So if somebody starts a sentence with I believe or I think, it's typically an opinion and not a fact. When we look at this information, we need to decide if her evidence is valid and if it supports her argument. Now, you might have some that is not valid, but it does support it, and you may have some that is valid and supports it, or it's valid and it doesn't support it. So you have to go through and decide, is your evidence valid or not, and also, does it support her argument? So you're going to want to include, is it valid? And does it support the evidence? If you can find, not the evidence, the argument. Oh my goodness. If you can pick out one really good piece of evidence that is valid and supports the argument, I would use that one as your example to answer the question. Go ahead and finish this question now, and we'll pick back up on the next section when you're done. All right, so our last section in this article, it's called No Longer Shunned as Loonies. And so the word shunned means to no longer talk to or associate with someone or something. And then a loony is what they would reference as like a crazy person or ridiculous. So when you think of like Looney Tunes, they're always doing like super ridiculous things. And so they just use loonies to describe people who had crazy ideas. And so this is saying that they are no longer disregarded as being so crazy because now there are more things starting to come up about this. The bracelet of silence is not the first device invented by researchers to stuff up digital assistants' ears. In 2018, 2 designers created Project Alias, an appendage that can be placed over a smart speaker to deafen it. But Ms. Zhang argues that a jammer should be portable to protect people as they move through different environments, given that you don't always know where a microphone is lurking. At this point, the bracelet was just a prototype. The researchers say that they could manufacture it for as little as $20, and that a handful of investors have asked them about commercializing it. With the Internet of Things, and the battle is lost, Mr. Zhao said, referring to a lack of control over data captured by smart devices, whether it gets into the hands of tech companies or hackers. The future is to have all of these devices around you, but you will have to assume they are potentially compromised, he added. Your circle of trust will have to be much smaller, sometimes down to your actual body. Other precursors or things or items that have come before this bracelet that are of similar style include a jammer coat, designed by an Austrian architect firm in 2014 to block radio waves that could collect information from a person's phone or credit cards. In 2012, the artist Adam Harvey created a silver-plated stealth wear garments that mask people's heat signatures to protect them from the eyes of drones, as well as a line of makeup and hairstyles called CV Dazzle to thwart facial recognition cameras. In 2016, Scott Urban, an eyewear maker in Chicago, developed a line of reflective frames that turned back visible and infrared light. When a surveillance camera films a person wearing the $164 frames, the reflected light blurs out the face. Mr. Urban called them reflecticles. He is now working full-time on privacy protection eyewear, including a new version with lenses that absorb infrared light to deter iris scanning and facial recognition cameras. His customers include privacy enthusiasts, political activists, and card counters whose faces have been placed on casinos' watch lists. People into their privacy are no longer shunned as loonies, Mr. Urban said. It becomes a concern for people of all ages, political perspectives, and walks of life. He added, new technologies are continually eroding our privacy and anonymity. People are looking for an opt-out, which is what I'm trying to provide. Woodrow Hartzog, a law and computer science professor at Northeastern University, doesn't think privacy armor is the solution to our modern woes. It creates an arms race. Consumers will lose in that race. He said, any of these things is a half measure or a stopgap. There will always be a way around it. Rather than building individual defenses, Mr. Hartzog believes we need policymakers to pass laws that more effectively guard our privacy and give us control over our data. Until then, we are playing cat and mouse, he said, and that will always end poorly for the mouse. All right, so this last question I made up, so it's not on your sheet. So this just says, what other privacy precursors are mentioned in the article? So remember that precursors means something or person that has come before of a similar style. So when we look back in this section of the article, there's a couple different ones you can pick from. There's a jammer coat, there's reflecticles, and there's a couple other, but most of them are going to be listed in this paragraph right here. And we know that because the word precursors is right there. So when you answer your question, you might say a privacy precursor to see precursor is ... Now, I can't just put the name of it because for those who haven't read the article, they're not going to know what that means. So if I just put reflecticles, they're going to be like, that sounds like something off the movie Spy Kids. I don't think that's real. So you need to make sure that if it has a funny name, that you need to make sure and explain what it is.
All right, guys, this is as far as I'm going to dive into this assignment with you today. I'm going to upload another video probably tomorrow or Friday about objective summaries and central ideas because those are really important to practice and I want you to have that opportunity, but I didn't want this video to be super long. So today we just focused on the vocab, we focused on answering those guiding questions, and then also a little bit of writing because, you know, it's reading, we can't help but write. I wanted to let you know that on Thursdays from 1 to 2, I'll be available to video chat or just chat in general if you have any questions regarding any of the packet. But I also know that your other 8th grade teachers like Mr. O'Connor, Mr. Thomas, Ms. Spears, Luca, they would all love to hear from you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can always email me or hit me up on Teams. I'm around my computer almost all the time, but it might take me a day or so to respond. Don't worry, I'll get to you. So that's all I really have for you today. I miss you guys like crazy. I hope you are having a wonderful time in our time apart and you're staying happy and healthy. Make good life choices, and I care about you, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.